And what you see here is a $7.3 billion IT top line, and we've broken out that budget into a 3-year picture on the left and divided that up between DME and SS funds. Now, I'm sure most of you are familiar with those terms, but just as a quick refresher, SS, or steady state, is really OpEx money. It's what's used to maintain current systems, while DME, which stands for Development, Modernization, and Enhancement, is CapEx. It's money used to buy new systems and new technology. Now, moving on to the circle chart on the right, I want to give you a sense of which HHS divisions control how much of that $7.3 billion number, and obviously CMS comes in with the most, at 58% of the total. Now, that's a little bit misleading because a huge portion of CMS's reported IT budget is actually grants, but if you strip those out, they are still the largest agency here. And the 3 others we're going to look at from a budget standpoint today are NIH, CDC, and FDA.
So you're not going to see too many surprises on this top contractor chart. What we do want to highlight, though, is specific contract vehicles, because you'll tend to find at HHS that most of the major opt-ins have their own large systems development contract that they heavily leverage for both IT services and products purchases. So you've got ESD at CMS, the various NITAC vehicles at NIH, SIMS at CDC, and so on. On the technology side, it's, as you would expect, difficult to pin something as large as HHS down to cross-cutting priorities. But we were able to identify 3 broad tech trends that we think will be requirements more or less across the board here. First and foremost, business and operations will be huge, and that's primarily driven out of CMS, particularly investments to support their Affordable Care Act systems. Health insurance exchanges still need to be modified and upgraded in FY15, particularly in anticipation of a second wave of ACA enrollment. We also expect to see a recompete of the NIH STOPS contract in FY15, and that's the vehicle that helps the NIH centers with their scientific data and other data management needs. And speaking of data, HHS as a whole has major requirements around the big data and analytics family of technologies. So those vendors in the audience who can support that will find requirements at every level here, although you should keep in mind that you'll need to tailor your message to the division that you're talking to. Some portions of HHS are more concerned with fraud prevention through predictive analytics, while others are looking more for data throughput and raw calculation speed to assist in scientific research. And finally, infrastructure, which is another expected area of spend for HHS, and that's both because of their large legacy expenditure and because of consolidation activities that we see at some of the divisions here. Specifically, groups like NIH are already starting to realize cost savings by centralizing IT infrastructure management within a single group. In other words, they're laying the foundation there for that open and modern technology stack in one place. At the same time, we see requirements for network enhancements around the research groups at FDA and CDC to look for requirements around collaboration, telecommunications, and data throughput there. And one final note, we could have put this anywhere really, but the Enterprise Systems Development, or ESD vehicle that Tom alluded to on the last slide will be up for recompete this year under the new name Sparks. Now, if any of you are familiar with CMS, you'll know how critical it is to be teamed with an ESD vendor. So if you don't have those relationships now, look out for that Sparks recompete and look to form some partnerships right now. This is a breakdown of the overall structure of HHS, and as you can see, the department is divided into 2 groups. You have the staff offices, which are headquarters functions where you'll find, for example, the Assistant Secretary for Administration, which is where the CIO lives. Think of these as high-level guidance, policy, and administrative functions that set the overall outline of the HHS mission and provide assistance in specialized areas when necessary. Now, there are not a lot of COTS opportunities at this level. The only group to really look for is that OCIO, which is headed by Frank Bateman. At the bottom of the screen, you have the groups that are more concerned with the day-to-day execution of that mission. At HHS, these are called operating divisions, or OpDivs for short. When you're selling, especially COTS, this is the level where you want to be, because as you saw in the circle chart, the OpDivs have the majority of HHS's IT budget, and they have a lot of leeway when it comes to spending it. So there are a few different insertion points at CMS, The operations group is where the Office of Information Services lives, and that's led by Janet Vogel, but you also want to be paying attention to the two other offices that we've highlighted here. First of all, the Center for Consumer Information and Insurance Oversight, or CCIO, is the office responsible for overseeing most of the Affordable Care Act systems at HHS. Now, this group is headed by Kevin Cunahan, but you'll also want to be on the lookout for Myra Alvarez, who leads the State Exchange Group under Kevin. Now, there's still development work ongoing on the back-end systems that are supporting the state and federal health insurance exchanges, so both Kevin and Myra will need application development, data management, and data integration tools. Now, another group to focus on is the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Innovation, led by Patrick Conway. This group has a lot of weight behind it right now, which mainly comes from the driving role CMMI is playing in data analytics use at CMS. Vendors with cutting-edge analytics and data management tools will want to reach out to Patrick.
Moving on to NIH, which is made up of 27 independent institutes and centers, or ICs. Now, in the interest of time, we're not going to go through all of these because we really could fill up the entire allotted time just talking about NIH. So I do want to focus on three that are really driving mission and budget behavior this year. The first of those is the Center for Information Technology, or CIT, which is led by Andrea Norris. That's that central infrastructure management group that I alluded to earlier. But from a mission application and particularly off-book spending perspective, the two centers to look at here are the National Cancer Institute, or NCI, and the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, or NIAID. Each of these has a lot of budget and almost total leeway, again, when it comes to spending it. Two names to look out for there. At NCI, your first port of call will be Warren Kibbe, and at NIAID, Dr. Michael Tartakovsky will be your primary point of contact. Now, like the other optives, FDA has a few mission areas that are really driving most of their IT purchasing this year. For off-book spending, look to the Center for Drug Evaluation and Research, or CDER. Their big push is an investment to support their pharmaceutical regulation mission, which we will talk about in a few slides. That division is headed up by Dr. Janet Woodcock. The other office to look for here is that Office of Information Management under the Office of Operations. Walter Harris is acting as CIO here, but in his day job is actually the Chief Operating Officer, which means he's acting as his own subordinate. All of that means is that there's a little bit of a leadership and management crisis at FDA, and your best approach in this optive is going to be establishing relationships at the program manager level rather than focusing on the CIO group.
Almost all of the action at CDC does take place down at their Atlanta headquarters. That's where you're going to find the Chief Operating Officer, who oversees Jim Seligman, the CIO. Now, within Jim's group, the real person that you want to pay attention to is Rob Curley at the IT Services Office. You're also going to find significant budget among the end users at the Office of Public Health Preparedness and Response, led by Sonia Rasmussen. Now, they're going to handle most of the off-books IT spending here, particularly around bioterrorism response.
And what we're going to do with each of the agencies that we look at today is wrap them up with a few major funded investments that represent COTS opportunity in FY15. And we'll start that with HHS with the Healthcare Insurance Exchange investment, which supports their Affordable Care Act systems in 2015. As you can see, funding here has dropped significantly from last year, down from $393 million to $95.5. But it's important not to read too much into that. Most of last year's funding was an emergency spike to deal with the original healthcare.gov rollout, and what we're seeing now is a return to normal levels. There is still major work to be done on this program and a lot of areas of COTS opportunity, which revolve primarily around the second wave of enrollment that I mentioned earlier. So look for requirements around content and forms management, case management enhancements, and even some portal and web design in the run-up to that. We're also seeing needs here for enhancements to the back-end data management and information sharing systems, particularly between HHS and Treasury. As a result, look for data integration, collaboration, information sharing, and some other data management requirements here as well.
All right, our next program is the Quality Program, and that's a generic-sounding title for what turns out to be a large collaboration program that really facilitates information exchange and cooperation between CMS and a group of contractors called Quality Improvement Organizations, or QIOs. Now, they're responsible for piloting new, innovative methods to deliver Medicare quality. Any technology that supports large-scale information exchange, particularly between industry and government, will find requirements and funding here. And we're also seeing a need for network management. Again, this is an area where you want to think uptime and throughput, as the data management for the supporting infrastructure are going to grow year over year. You'll also find an opportunity in help desk management with the potential to replace the current help desk system that supports the QIOs in 2015.
We'll wrap up HHS with a look at the major FDA investment that I mentioned earlier. What they're looking to do with this roughly $24 million in DME funding is build a new suite of applications to support their pharmaceutical regulation mission at FDA. Requirements here run the gamut from data management, both structured and unstructured, through to analytics and even a little bit of scientific computing. There's an application development play here as well, because CDER is looking to design large parts of this solution in-house. Since this application tracks every aspect of the pharmaceutical inspection and research processes, there will be numerous legacy data streams that need to be incorporated and visible in the final tool, so data integration requirements exist here as well. Finally, look for BPM and workflow management to be built in with the suite, because this system will handle a lot of disparate workflows that were previously managed under siloed legacy systems.